In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this handy sewing tool holder. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and recently I was watching a video from Rhonda Buss where she made this little holder next that she can have her tools next to her sewing machine. And I thought, wow, that looks really handy. So I thought I would make one too. Now I have made some changes to the design that Rhonda had used. I've changed some of the fabric sizes, and I'll explain why I'm doing that and the process to make this in this video. So let's take a closer look at this little guy here. So you can see here we've got pouches on the front. There's 6 pouches on the front, and there is 2 pouches on the back, so they are longer ones on the back. And you could actually make this if you didn't want to stitch down here. You can make one large pouch on the back if you wanted to do that. But for the method I'm going to show you, we actually are making the 2 pouches on the back. And this all fits over an acrylic picture frame that you can get at the dollar store. So this is a 5" by 7" frame. You can make it in different sizes if you want, but then you have to make some adjustments in the fabric sizes as well. But I think this is a pretty good size because you don't want anything too big next to your machine. You know, if you have some huge 8 by 10 one, that'd be a little bit big, right? So this is a nice size, good size to hold different tools. And so I'm going to explain to you the sizes of the fabrics, but I just wanted to point out that I have changed the sizes of these pockets so that I've got some extra width in them, okay? In Rhonda's example, she had made them just straight across, so they would be like, you know, kind of like this. I wanted to make sure I had some extra room in there to put in, you know, some items that may be a little thicker, like my seam ripper, for example, here. Okay, so let's talk about what you need to make this sewing tool holder. So we already talked about the acrylic frame that you need, 5" by 7", but of course you need fabric too, right? So let's talk about the fabric. We have those 3 pockets on the front that are going to be divided in half to give you 6 pockets, right? And so those are all going to be cut 7.5" by 6". So 7.5 is going to be the width, and they're each 6" this way, okay? That way, not all that way, this way, okay? And there's more, of course, with construction with them, but that's the size you're going to start off with. Then you also have that back pocket. So the back pocket is 7.5" wide as well, but it's 11" long. So it gives you that deeper pocket. There's only one on the back. Okay. Then you also have this backing. This is the part here. You don't see as much of it, but it's this part here, and we're actually going to quilt it. So it's what's going to be behind the pockets. And so you need to have a piece of fabric that is 6.5" by 15. Thank goodness I told you the sizes already, because I suspect that Salem's going to take off with these Post-it notes. But let's get back to the backing. So 6.5" wide by 15" long. And then you also need batting behind it because you're actually going to quilt this, all right? It gives it some more stability. And so the batting, I cut a bit shorter. So this is different than what Rhonda did as well. So I cut it 6" wide by 14.5. And the reason I did that is because I don't really want it to be out in the seams, okay? We don't really need the batting to be out in the seams. You know, it just takes up extra bulk and makes it a little more difficult to stitch. So I made it just a little bit shorter. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that piece of backing, you're going to take your batting, you're going to put it on the wrong side of the backing fabric, and you're going to center it. And then you're going to free motion quilt it, ruler quilt it, whatever you want to do, you're going to quilt it, okay? So you're ending up with a piece like this. Okay, so that's your first step, and then we get into more, of course. But before we do that, I wanted to just point out that there is an icon, which is a little heart with a $sign underneath this video, and that is called a super thanks. And that is your opportunity to support the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel and my small business. So you can make a donation. You just click on that, choose the amount you wish to donate to help support the channel, and that helps me to buy the items I use in my videos. So if you care to do that, I would truly appreciate it. Now let's talk about the front pockets first. Actually, there's one more thing I want to do with this backing while I've got it here. I want to find the center of it, and I want to mark it, okay? And this is going to be something we're going to rely on when we actually add our pockets. So I just folded it in half. I mean, you can measure if you want, but I found this was really easy. Just fold it in half. I pressed it. If it's not perfect, don't worry about it, okay? This is a very forgiving project. All right, so I've got it folded there, so I can see that fold. Now, if you want, you can also mark it. So use a removable marking tool. I've got a friction pen here. Whoops-a-daisy, I'm losing my pin cushion there. Not good, not good. Okay, so I'm just running this down along where I had pressed that and just drawing a line on here. As I said, we're going to use this when we place the pockets, not just the front pockets, but the back pocket as well. Okay, so you can see that. Lucky with all the colors in there, I wasn't sure I'd be able to see that pen or not. All right, so now I know that's the center, so I'm just going to move it off to the side for now, and let's address those front pockets. Okay, so I have 3 different fabrics here, 3 different pockets. Split in half gives us 6. Oh, my math is doing well today, isn't it? Okay, remember I said they were 7.5 inches by 6. You're going to take them, you're going to fold them in half this way. And again, press. All right, so now they're going to measure 7.5 by 3. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing with all of them. And then there's another step with these pockets. And of course, you probably have noticed, just want to put this down for a second, that the width of the pockets is wider than the backing, right? And that is because I want that extra amount of fabric to give me those wider pockets. So that's why I've done that. Okay, so there we go. We've got our 3 pockets, okay, and they're going to look, you know, however I want to arrange them, something like this on the front. Doesn't matter however you want to arrange them. I'll leave that up to you, depending on the kind of fabric you have. But I need to be able to line these up and center them on that backing fabric. So they need to get pressed one more time. Again, I'm doing the same thing I did with the backing. I'm just folding them in half, giving them a little bit of a press. And again, if you want to mark these, you can mark them with a pin, or you could mark them with, a friction pen. I could use my ruler. I could just kind of run it along there. I found that these were, when I folded them, because these are kind of solidish fabrics, that I really didn't need to do any marking on them. The fold was enough for me to be able to line them up. So I'm going to do the same thing with all of them. They're all going to get pressed. Okay. And last but definitely not least, okay. So that's my front pockets, but I also have a back pocket. Now, what do you think we're going to do with that back pocket fabric? Probably something fairly similar, right? So let's take it. Again, it's 7.5 inches by 11. So I'm going to take it, fold it this way. I'm going to press it, of course. And then, guess what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to press it in half again. Now, if you choose not to have this divided in half, if you just want one big pocket, you don't have to do this step. But for the sewing tool holder that I'm going to show you how I made it, I actually am going to divide that back into 2 pockets, just like the front ones. All right, so the next thing to do is to get them onto that backing, right? Okay, so backing is right side up, all quilted. You have to make sure you do that first. Then I have to decide my order. Now I'm just going to put them on in this order. Now, how do I line these up? Couple things. First off, this first piece here is going to line up with the raw edge along the bottom of the backing. And also we want this center part to be along the center here. Okay, again, you don't have to be perfect on this, okay? We've got some extra play here, so don't worry too much about it. These other 2 are actually going to go underneath the bottom pocket. Again, I want to line these up. Okay, if they move a bit, I can just move them back. And how far up do you want them? Well, that can be up to you, but what works out quite well, let's get this the right way, is about 1.5 inches. So I'm a little bit higher right now. I'm at 1 3/4 inches, so I'm just going to peel this back. We're going to move this guy down about 1/4 inch. Let's see how that works. Get everybody lined up again. This is probably the most awkward part about this. Okay, there we go, right on. Okay, perfect. And we've got one more to go. So again, I'm lining up that center where I creased it there. And let's see if it's about 1/4 inch, not 1/4, a little bit more than that. It's 1 1/4 inch, so let's move it up a little bit. All right, and let's just double check that and see. Perfect. All right, so these are all on here. That's great. I need to keep them there, right? So let's pin them. Okay, so I'm going to put a few pins in here just to keep them in place. I'm going to be stitching down the center here, so I want to keep my pins away from that area. That one's not a very good pin. I have a few pins that have been chewed by kittens, I think, or perhaps run over by my machine. Not good, but it happens occasionally. I usually take them out, but occasionally. Okay, so I've got them like this. Don't be concerned they don't line up at the edges. We're not worrying about that at this point in time. Okay, now we have the back pocket. Same kind of thing. I'm going to swing this around here just so it's easier to see. So I've got my raw edges here where I folded it in half. I'm lining it up along the bottom. I'm lining up that crease with that line, right, that we had drawn. So we've got the center of the pocket with the center of the backing, quilted backing. And we're just going to stick that in there too. All right, again, you'll notice that the edges are going to be extend past the backing, so not a problem. That's how I want them at this stage in time. So the next step is to go to the sewing machine because we're going to sew all the way down that line and the creases, okay, to give us those pockets. So meet me at the sewing machine and I'll show you that step. So now I'm ready to do some stitching, and I actually did draw the line all the way down, so it'll be easier for you to see where I'm going. I don't need it, right? Okay, so I'm just going to stitch down there, just a straight stitch. I'm using a 2.2 length. I can actually go a little bit bigger, maybe 2.4, probably a little bit better. It doesn't have to be really, really small. And I don't have to lock my stitches because they're going to get caught in the next stitching I do, but you can if you want. It's totally up to you. So let me just place my needle down there. Okay, and I'm just going to stitch all the way up that drawn line. And one thing I should mention, I'm using the HP 2 foot on the Janome CM17. So this is like a walking foot, if you will. So I find that just works a little bit better to move everything along. Here's where the stitching gets tricky. I can still see where I pressed it though, so we're good. Okay. Okay, so there we go. We've got that center all stitched down. If you're not perfectly on the line, don't worry. It's very forgiving, as I said. And you can choose whatever color thread you want. I just went with the same pink I used in the quilting. So my next step here is to take my pins out, of course. My next step is to actually pin all of these raw edges along the side. So I would want to go and pin this here, you know, put a few pins in here, the other side, all of these pockets as well. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back and show you the next step, which is going to be stitching at the machine. So this is what the project looks like at this point in time. So we've got it all pinned along the raw edges, okay? And you know there's some bubbles here, and we're going to address those in this next step. So what I want to do next is I want to just use a basting, a longer stitch, to go a little bit less than 1/4 inch all the way around. So we're going to baste this all the way around, so that will attach the pockets to that backing rectangle that's already been quilted, okay? So I'm just going to start. You can start wherever you want. And we're going to go back around, so you don't need to lock your stitches. You can if you want. So I'm less than 1/4, so I'm just using my foot. This is a 1/4 inch foot, so I'm making sure that my fabric is running, you know, I don't have my foot along the edge of my fabric. I'm just moving the fabric over a little bit, okay? So I'm going to turn my speed down just a little bit as well. And turn it down a little bit more, okay? All right, so here we go. Making sure I take out my pins as I go. A little bit further than I want. Let me just back that up one. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to turn the corner. You can hear all my pins going along with me. Now, you're going to notice as I come along here that I've got this extra bulk. What am I going to do with that? Well, what I do is I go approximately halfway between the edge and the center line I've already stitched. Doesn't have to be perfect. And just grab a little bit of that fabric and fold it down so it's flat. So you're making like a little bit of a dart, really. Okay, so that way I've got that extra piece there, but it's, you know, folded down nicely. Same thing's going to happen on this side, right? And I'm folding it, I mean, you could fold it the opposite way. I'm just folding it the same way to keep it simple. Keep going. Okay, we're going to turn around the corner as well. And I'm just going to keep going here. All right, so I would just keep going. Now I've got these, little darts are in here. Okay, and that's lying nice and flat there, not a problem, but it gives me that extra space at the top. So I'm just going to keep going all the way around. I'll be doing the same thing when I come down to the other end on these other pockets. I'm just going to fold it over a little bit, give me that little dart at the bottom, and it'll be all good to go. So I'm going to finish that and then show you the next step. So I've done the basting all the way around, so this is what it looks like. So you can see I've got these little tucks here, and I've got a little tuck in the bottom here as well. Actually, I did fold these the opposite way. Doesn't really matter, you're not going to see it in the end. Okay, so that's one thing to do. The next thing you're going to do is you need to take both of these ends here. You might have to take off some extra thread, like I need to do apparently, but I want to fold these ends up and affix them, okay? So I want a nice finished edge. If you've got a serger or something, you could serge the edge if you wanted to. I'm not going to bother doing that. I don't have a serger, and I'm not too concerned. But this is going to be inside. You're not going to see it, but you do want to finish this edge here. So what you're going to do is fold it up about 1/2 inch, something like that. Again, don't have to be super precise. And I just want to stitch, excuse me, down here, again, less than 1/4 inch. So I could pretty much stitch over the existing lines that I had there, okay? So I may need to put a little bit of a pin in here somewhere to hold that. Okay, let me just see if I can pin this a bit, just to hold it a little bit there. You could press it as well if you wanted to, but for demo purposes here, I just want to keep it down there. Okay, just good enough for me to get it under the needle and stitch it. So I'm going to do that on both sides, all right? And so I've got this folded up here. We're just going to stitch down the sides, and then I have something else I want to do to keep it in place, all right? So let's stitch it first though, okay? One thing at a time, right? So again, with the less than 1/4 inch seam, I know I'm repeating myself a bit. Sometimes it's for your benefit, sometimes it's for mine. Okay, I'm just going to start up here a little ways. We'll put my needle down here. Okay, let's get the needle down there, and we're just going to sew. And this is just a basting stitch as well. It doesn't have to be... Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Let's go down. Let's go down to about 2.4. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to go backwards to lock my stitches. Okay, and then we come down. Okay, and I'm going to go backwards here and forwards. Okay, cut my stitches. Okay, I just want to make sure that it locks it in there for me. Okay, this side I'm starting on the other end, so I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to start here and go backwards. And then forwards. All right, and I can just lock my stitches here. I have a lock stitch that I'll use. All right, cut my stitches. All right, so just take these off here. Okay, so there's one done, okay, which looks kind of weird at this point, doesn't it? Because it's still sticking up here. Now, you could go along and stitch this if you wanted to. I decided to do something different, which I'll show you in just a minute. I'm just going to finish the other side, then I'm going to meet you back at the pressing, or the cutting table, I should say, and show you what I'm going to do to finish those edges down. Okay, so I finished stitching the sides on both of these, you can see, but it's still, you know, sticking up, isn't it? So here's where the glue comes in handy. All right, so I've got some Elmer's glue here. It's just a regular glue stick, and I'm just putting it on underneath there, okay? And then it's going to go like this, and it's going to stay. Well, no, it's not, but I'll make it stay. Don't worry about it. And when I'm folding this up here, I can see that stitching. You know, I can just line it up there to make sure it's all lying properly. And then we're going to take our iron on hot, dry setting. And if you want to put some parchment paper, you know, between your project and the iron, might not be a bad idea. Depends on how good you are with a glue stick. Hopefully I was pretty good with a glue stick today. Okay, and it takes a little bit. There we go. And then that's going to hold it down there as well as I need it. I mean, I might have to press it a little bit more, but again, I don't want to take up too much time here for this demo. And be generous with your glue. Okay, lining up that stitching again. and giving it a nice good press with a dry iron. Don't need steam for this process. All right, there we go. So this is what we look like so far. Now, something I'm going to do here is I can still see my drawn line there, which I don't like, so I'm going to get rid of that. That's my friction pan I'm getting rid of with the heat, just so it looks a little bit better. Okay, the nice thing about this project is I can take it on and off that acrylic frame. So once I put it on, it's not like it's permanent. It's not like I can't take it off if I wanted to for whatever reason I may want to. Okay, so the next step is going to be pretty much the final step. Now that we've got those edges finished, we are going to fold this in half. And yes, it gets a little bulky, but don't worry about it. And I actually am going to give it a little bit of a press here. You don't have to do this, but it just helps to keep it down a little bit more. And then I want to actually sew up the side. So I'm going to sew up the side here, going to sew up the side here with a 1/4 inch seam now. So before we did all that basting and everything with a less than a 1/4 inch seam, so we won't see those stitches. So that's the next thing to do. So you fold it right sides together, make sure you've got the batting showing, and go down with a 1/4 inch seam on each side. Make sure you lock your stitches at the start and at the end. So I'm going to go to the machine and show you how to do that. Okay, so ready to go here. This time I want to make sure that I am on a setting that's like 2.4 or less. Like, don't be on your basting stitch here, because you want, this is what's going to hold everything together, right? So you want to make sure it's going to stay. So going over the side here, I'm going to go back and forward again. I'm going to go back to lock my stitches. All right, and then I'm going to do the other side. I'm just going to check. I've done this, got a bit of a while there. Don't worry if your stitching isn't perfect. Okay, it's going to be just fine. Let's do the other side. All right, so this is what we have here. It looks like an oven mitt, sort of, doesn't it? Okay, so we're gonna have to turn it right side out, right? So let's go back to the cutting table for the final reveal. All right, so now the last thing you need to do is just pull it out. It's a bit stiff, but it does come out. You've got a little big space there to pull it out through, not like we often have, right? We often have a little tiny space. Okay, you can just poke out the edges, the corners, I should say. Okay, all right, smooth it down here. We can give it a final press there, just along the edges, sort of. All right, so here it is, but it's not quite done yet. We have to get that frame, so it's just going to go over top of the frame. You just slide it on, slide it down, just like that. You've got lots of extra space to make it go in, so there's no tugging to try and get it on. And there you have it. And so then you can put your different tools in here. Maybe some of my friction pens, that might be handy to put in. How about my glue stick? It can go down the bottom one here. So this is what I was saying when I made these pockets wider, is to hold, you know, things that are wider, okay? Because if your pockets are just really flat, it would be really hard to get something like this glue stick in there, or anything that has any kind of width to it. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you might be wondering, if you were noticing, how I made my little pin cushion here. Here's something else you can repurpose, is a china mug. Doesn't have to be china, but a mug. If you have a mug that's maybe chipped, but you really still like it and you want to use it, I have a video that shows you how you can make it into a pincushion. So be sure you check out this video next to find out how to do just that. For more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.